I can play you hundreds of new videos. We already did the last few days of in the U.S., in Europe, in Australia, kill the Jews, kill the Christians, murder them, them marching around the Melbourne Cathedral, thousands of Muslims, very threateningly, attacking Christian displays, truck attacks, all of it getting covered up. Cops getting stabbed in Washington State by people screaming Allah Akbar, doesn't even hit the national news. So Nick said a few weeks ago on my show, he said, yeah, I think Europe's got a big Muslim problem, which is true. There's 3 times more of them over there than here. But he said in the U.S., it's really a red herring for Israel. Well, it's true that Israel lobby uses the threat of Islam to distract from itself. But that's like saying somebody burns down your house, or burns down the business next door to a bank to divert the cops while they rob the bank. It doesn't mean that the restaurant didn't just get burned down. So it's 2 different things. So I'd like you to elaborate on that and actually give us your take on it, because if you study the Quran, it's a military takeover manual. You have the Muslim Brotherhood that's allied with Obama and the Democrats and Starmer and the deep state in their larger plan. You got the UAE and Saudi Arabia who have all their own issues that have been warning about that group because that's their enemy. But if you look at terrorism historically, it's like 90% out of the Muslim Brotherhood. So my point is that, yeah, it's not existential yet here, except you have the same alliances with the left, with Islam. And so with that combination and them as the foot soldiers, so what if they're only 5% of the population or whatever? That as a motivated group that vote how they're told, donate how they're told, look at the Somalis, 8 billion stolen, we know now, is that it's cancer. So, and so I'm not trying to dunk on you and say, admit you're wrong. Elaborate on it. I get your point about it being used by Israel's distraction, but then I get all this criticism constantly every time I talk about Islam, saying, why are you covering up for Israel or whatever? And to me, I just cover any foreign powerful thing trying to take over. So whereas Israel has organization, money, control, manipulation, very sophisticated, with the Muslims, they've got a caveman book, but when humans are willing to follow an order, we're powerful. And so, I do see it as one of the main threats. So where do you see this? What's your actual views on this?
Well, my actual view on the whole situation is, of course, we want to live in a Christian country. We want to live in a country with Christian government and mostly Christian people. And I'm not in favor of bringing Muslims in as refugees from wars or even for that matter as immigrants and setting up these enclaves. I look at, for example, the Somalis in Minneapolis. I don't know that any patriotic person can say that that Minnesota, which is a land of like Swedes and Norwegians, Finnish, that this is going to turn into an enclave of Somalians wearing hijabs and, that's all the kids in the schools and all the signs are in Somalian, the mayor is speaking Somalian. I get all that. I guess I would just say, when is the last time there's even been a Muslim attack in the United States? It has to have been years. And in the meantime, we've had all kinds of other attacks from Antifa, people that hate ICE, from transgenders. There's an assortment of threats these days. And it's not to minimize it, but it's to say, we live in a time of violent fanaticism. And when you look at the demographic numbers, I guess I would just say, what exactly is the threat? And people might say, well, it's obvious, it's terrorism. And okay, yeah, that's valid. I mean, there's certainly terrorism. But for example, this guy at Bondi Beach, that's in Australia, not America, firstly. But secondly, he was known to law enforcement. He was known to law enforcement specifically as someone who was connected to an ISIS terror cell. And so my question is more, this is frequently the case, these people that commit these acts of terrorism, even that Afghan that committed the shooting recently here in the United States, he was CIA, right, exactly, he was CIA. He worked with the U.S. military. So it's like all these people that are committing the attacks, they're all in bed with the government or known to the government. Maybe we just have the government do a better job of sniffing this stuff out. I mean, there's a lot of Muslims.
No, I respect what you just said. I don't think terror is the threat. They do that once they get a big enough control of a town to push you out. That's in the Quran. In his Medina takeover, he explains how to do it. That's why they read that and they do that. It's not just random stabbings and things. The imam tells them to do it. It's mujahideen. The real threat is they now say, we failed taking over the Europe because we did it militarily. We're going to vote ourselves in. We're going to access the war chest and take over that way. So that's the problem, is if you get up to 5, 10%, look at Europe, they're a swing vote that goes with the left almost 100% of the time. So I don't see the terror as the threat. I see them not being able to help themselves, some of the Orthodox Muslims that are doing it, as them not being able to help themselves and jumping the gun. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I agree with you about Europe because that's where they're mostly concentrated. But here in the United States, it's just such a small fraction of the population. I don't consider it in that pantheon of major threats. I view it as totally secondary because the major threat with immigration is India. India sending these like people by the hundreds of thousands here. And they are true colonists because they will take over an entire business. You get one Indian in the business, they hire all people from their caste from India. And then in 5 years, the whole company's India.
I mean, I, on average, like Indian people, okay? Don't dislike them for who they are, but I know the history, right? And I saw this number about a month ago. I did a deep dive on it for like 3 hours. It's worse than they said. I saw like a Breitbart video. Pull up the Breitbart animation of it. 70% of the H-1B visas to the U.S. are from India, and something like 85% are from one province who came here 50 years ago, bought hotels, bought gas stations, and it's a mafia where they have to send the money back. And then they're big on paying off politicians. And it's true, folks, any Indian business that they do the bankruptcy thing, they're because they'll work the system. You know, you go to the airport now, there's like 20 Indians that are young in wheelchairs. They're like, well, why shouldn't I go to the front of the line and be pushed? If it's legal, I just say I'm disabled. And it's stereotypical, but it is happening. But it's that particular tribe, particular caste is the vast majority of Indians coming here. And they're literally, yeah, let's play this report with audio in a minute. They literally grease the skids. So you're absolutely right that these are tribal groups. Like we think the Somalis are an issue because they're tribal and do what they're told and controlled. We're all taught like Italians, it was just really Sicilians were a mafia. This is amateur compared to the Indians. So you're dead on about this. Let's roll this short clip.
We know from decades of government data that H-1Bs overwhelmingly go to men arriving from India. And not only do they go from men arriving from India, they come from one area in India, one small area in India. So this one, if you believe that the H-1B is bringing in the best and brightest from around the world, how is it even possible that this one region in India is producing 7 in 10 of the world's geniuses that we're bringing in on the H-1Bs?
And it gets worse than that. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to back up what you're saying. Yeah, India.
Yeah, so in terms of immigration and like a demographic takeover, it's Indians, it's Chinese, it's Mexicans, it's Venezuelans. To me, just in terms of the numbers, those are the biggest ones coming here. And then in terms of political influence, I mean, you're right that Muslims are in bed. Some of these Muslim organizations are in bed with the Democrats. But again, I fall back on who are the biggest donors for the Democratic Party. It's like Michael Bloomberg. It's Reid Hoffman. It's like it's all pro.
That's another question. Why are prominent Jews the dominant group, along with Catholic Charities, shipping in illegals to the West?
Well, I think that Jewish people, they benefit as a group the more multicultural that America becomes. It's a very simple formula, which is that if America's all white and all Christian, Jews stick out like a sore thumb, and it's easy to segregate them and easy to discriminate against them. If America's completely diverse and there's all different types of people and we're liberal and tolerant and pluralistic, well, then they're just a group among other groups. So this is just a strategy. Because, of course, in Israel, they want homogeneity. They want the country to be all Jewish. They want Netanyahu to be their king. You know, they are aggressive militarily. That's how they are when they're the majority. When they're in the minority, they want America to be as liberal and tolerant and pluralistic as possible. So that's why 80% of them are voting Democrat. That's why their billionaires are putting money behind the Democratic Party. And so that's why I would say that it's really these other groups that are the bigger issue. And don't get me wrong, I don't want Muslims influencing the country. I don't want Muslims pouring across the border. But in terms of if your problem is foreign lobbying, Democrat power players, clannish behavior, ethnic enclaves, you got all these other groups you got to worry about that just in terms of the numbers are more pernicious. And that's not because I'm like infatuated with Muslims. If we were living in Europe, I would be Tommy Robinson. If we were in Europe, I would be saying, yeah, Muslims, they're doing their call to prayer. This is a huge issue. They got to go. But we don't live in Europe. We live here. So I think we just have different problems because America's separated by an ocean from the Middle East in a way that Europe is not.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like in Europe, we have much more of a Muslim problem, and in the US, you have like a bunch of Indians, South Americans, Mexican. Obviously, we all have the problem of mass immigration just from different places.
Or into Europe over a land bridge and over a very small, strait in the sea.
Rubber boats.
And then they're in Europe. Yeah, go ahead.
So let me ask you this question. You seem overly or somewhat optimistic. I'm going to say overly. And I'm optimistic as well. Separate from Trump, populism rising, the West rising, Eastern Europe rising. What futures do you see? Or sometimes I see you seem optimistic, sometimes you're not. Regardless, where do you see the future going?
Well, I'm not optimistic in the short term because I think there is a cataclysm that's imminent. War with China, economic collapse, this debt crisis is going to reset the currency. But I'm optimistic because the young men seem to have woken up. And some people call me an accelerationist for saying this. I really think I'm just someone who thinks in terms of second and third order consequences, even let's say for Europe as an example. One reason that I'm less worried about Muslims is that let's game it out. Okay, Muslims take over Europe. Eventually that radicalizes all the white people, even the liberals. Because liberals are going to start to say, well, we want feminism and we want gay rights and we want to have a general climate of licentiousness, and Muslim rule is not going to be conducive to that. So on a long enough timeline, you create enough Muslims in Europe, and yeah, there is like civil war conditions, but that makes the Europeans become who they are.
Yeah, but Nick, come on, let's be honest, bro. We cannot count on those people. Like people that promote feminism, abortion, gay rights, those people can't fight. And especially, you can say, well, groups like Antifa and the Communist Party, they're really violent, especially protesting, Free Palestine, those kind of things. But the thing is, they're violent against nobody. Like, they're violent against civilians, businesses, but not against really violent people, So if we imagine a civil war between the Muslims and the feminists, bro, come on, man. What are they gonna do? Throw nails at them?
And I'm not saying we should do that. I'm not saying let's roll the dice. I'm saying you can kind of forecast out how that will play out. And you can see how Muslims being a very imminent and apparent threat is actually going to galvanize resistance. And I view America similarly, which is to say that as America becomes more diverse, as it starts to fall apart, the young men are going to actually be galvanized by these things. That's why I've always said America first is inevitable, because if what we are saying is true, the country's going to get a lot worse. But people are going to change their behavior. People are not potted plants, they react. And so as the country gets worse, the cost to benefit ratio of engaging in politics, of being a radical, being, let's say, pro-white, pro-American, pro-Christian, it's going to change. 20 years ago, you didn't want to be a racist because it was such a high social cost. And people said, well, why do we care about race? And it was easy to say that because race wasn't really a problem. We lived in a country that was still mostly white, and the diversity had not set in yet, and the demographic change was not felt. And so people said, hey, man, this is like a big, happy white country with some non-white people. Who cares if they cause some problems or they're a little rude? It's not a big deal. Okay, 30 years down the line, 40, 50 years down the line, whites are the minority. Stacey Abrams is president. She's taking money from white people to give to non-white people. Like, we're at the end of a gun. We're at the end of a spear. Then people are going to start to say, wait a second, we need to look out for each other. We need to band together. So you can sort of see how the only way out is through. So I'm pessimistic in the short term. These systems and these the ways of doing things that have been the way they are for a long time, they can't go on. It's not sustainable. There will be a hard reset. There will be a true revolution in every domain of society. On the other side of that, there is an opportunity to make things better. It's not inevitable that we actualize it, but there is an opportunity that when everything comes apart, when things get really heated and hot, if the right wing has the numbers and the organization and the discipline, we can take advantage of it and maybe we can then control the future.
Well, what you're
And
saying
that's
is true.
sort of-
I mean, after World War II, we had the baby boom. It happens in every country. When things are really good, nobody has children. Elon Musk talked about Rome was studied in Carthage. Their birth numbers were declining massively. Then they have this big war and almost get defeated, and they have this big giant boom, and then 300 years of a golden era. And this is a fact. So we're not calling for hard times, but we're in hard times. We have to bypass the brainwashing where they put you in a hard time and convince you it's a good time. We have to admit we're in this fight and start thriving now. Here's a clip of Elon.
What ended most civilizations was a low birth rate. An extended period of prosperity seems to cause birth rates to plummet. And it's somewhat counterintuitive. When a society is under stress, birth rates increase. So if you look at, say, ancient Rome, the birth rates were super high when they were fighting the Carthaginians, and Rome's very life was at stake. Birth rates were all-time high. After they defeated Carthage and ruled the Mediterranean, the birth rates plummeted. And to such a degree that Julius Caesar even tried to pass laws like in 50 BC or something like that to give an incentive for any Roman citizen that would have a second or third child. So they were having birth rate issues in 50 BC, which is pretty wild. And that was also true of really basically every civilization throughout history. So it's how do you avoid this birth rate collapse?
And I've seen the studies. There's like 5 or 6 trees. One of them's out in California, different species around the world that are in arid areas where they're up high and they're not getting hardly any nutrients. But because it's so bad, the trees are like 2,000 years old. But they've done studies with the same species of tree, plenty of water, plenty of nutrient, grows fast, gets big, dies quick. So it really is true that we have to recognize we're in a crisis. And I'm not putting you on the spot. You're 26. You're still super young. But I had, a couple kids by 26. Nick, you're under crisis. You're under pressure. You need to marry Cash Patel's girlfriend. I'm joking. You need to marry Laura Logan. No, not Laura Logan.
I don't want to talk about her. I don't want to get
Loomer.
sued.
I'm sorry, Laura Logan's awesome, and so is Laura Loomer. You should marry Laura Loomer.
Well, she just got engaged. Did you see?
No.
It was just announced today. She got engaged. Alex, they're taking them from me. First Candace Owens, now Laura Loomer. There's none left. There's no women left for me. All my girlfriends are being stolen by the Trump admin, by Turning Point.
Seriously,
so you got to fix me up.
Laura
You got to
Loomer's
fix me
getting
up with
married?
somebody. Yeah,
Wow.
I know.
Wow, who's she marrying?
I don't know. Some idiot, I'm sure. I mean, I don't even know what that's all about.
Yeah, I agree with Nick with the fact that there will be consequences because European people, American people, especially young men, we are just tired of it. But I disagree a little bit with Nick when it comes to the Muslim problem. And maybe it's just because I live in Europe and he lives in the US. But realistically, we cannot count on those weak feminists, communists, leftist people, even if they're white, Like I said, Muslims are much more organized on warfare than those people. So it's not going to happen, no? And if you look at North Africa and even in sub-Saharan Africa, all those countries were Christian, but the Muslims took over completely. Like, let's be honest, bro. China, India, Mexico, South America, they're not taking over the world, okay? But if you look at Muslims, they already tried and they took a lot of it. So, yeah. But maybe it's just because I live in Europe. I don't know. Guys, let me know in the comments what you think, if you agree with Nick or you don't. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to. Christ is King, and God bless you.